I hope you're ready for some ill logic. Last time we went over week 4 of the Whooper Club League and our battle against Clark and the Blessed Walreins. Please go check that video out first if you have not done so already, as I covered the Teambuilder battle and post-game interview of the match, which, spoiler alert, the Buffalo Bouffalant continued their hot streak with a 4-0 victory to bring our overall record to 4-0, the last remaining undefeated team in the league with perhaps the 3 toughest battles left to finish out the regular season. If you haven't already guessed, we'll be taking on Haberfish, coach of the 2-2 Cleveland Castforms. I met Haberfish as more of a friend type thing, but I've always had a blast hanging out when he is around. He's also the one who drew several of the league's logos, including the one that stands out the most to me and our opponent last week, the Blessed Walreins. Definitely a talented individual, but we're going to have to bring him down in Pokemon. As always, we'll be going over the Team Builder, battle, and post-game interview. Timestamps will be in the description. He's got an odd team for sure, starting with Zeraora at the top, followed by Drapion, Obstagoon, Necrozma, Phalanx, Centiskorch, Wailord is the only Dynamax target, Ice-Cube, Galarian Corsola, and Appleton. So, very strange, lots of one-trick pony kind of Pokemon in there. Things like Ice-Cube and Phalanx stand out for that, but also lots of jack-of-all-trade sorts of things too, like Necrozma and Zeraora especially. Definitely an interesting overall balance, but some definite weaknesses to break through and exploit. One of them, I think, is Wailord, which is overall a pretty subpar Dynamax mon, although it can't be overstated how cool it is to see Wailord's HP reach hilarious numbers when it Dynamaxes. Still, the coverage is somewhat lacking, as is the power behind it, so I'm not terribly worried about it. Ice-Cube has won the Castforms at least one game by itself, but I have a ton of different answers to it, between Will-O-Wisp, Flash Cannons, other such hard stops to Ice-Cube's shenanigans. Drapion is a bit of a threat, perhaps my favorite Gen 4 Pokemon as well, but it struggles in this matchup a bit between all of my ground coverage options, as well as all the aforementioned burns it really doesn't want to suffer. Finally, Galarian Corsola has plenty of use and utility that can be explored for Draft League, but I have a couple amazing answers to it available in the forms of Aegislash and Shedskin Scrafty, not to mention the special attackers that could come, or my tendency to run Substitute in this Dynamax metagame. Moving on to the bigger threats and the 6 I expect him to bring, Appleton, if it can break through my subs, can cause some massive issues with Apple Acid or Leech Seed, ruining setup plans, or just straight up walling some members of my team like Rotom or Celebi. It is a bit weak to Toxic and the like, but I don't want to be taking those big hits that Appleton dishes out. Next up is Phalanx, who after a boost becomes pretty strong and pretty bulky, not to mention being at +1 speed. The coverage is pretty decent, and I really don't have that many options to hit it super effectively either. Obstagoon doesn't need that much coverage, as its stabs alone can rip through the team relatively safely. My Steel type being weak to Dark does not help this matchup against the Goon, and I almost feel required to run some extra coverage just for this thing before it punches a giant hole in the team. Necrozma can punch holes too, but it's always more revered for its sweeping abilities. A Calm Mind could be all it needs to sweep right on through, as Psychic and Fire coverage puts in a lot of work versus not just my team, but basically the whole league. Centiskorch may be an odd pick to put up this high, but its typing and coverage really help it punch through my defensive mons. A Boost Coil set or an AV set spells trouble, and threatens the ability to take something with it at the very least. Finally, of course, Zeraora is a big threat. Its base speed is through the roof, and it has dummy good coverage to boot, with the ability to boost on either side. Way too versatile, way too difficult to deal with or prep for with just one Pokemon. Again though, there are some glaring flaws in the Castform, so we're going to exploit that. Starting off with everything that does not make the cut, Kingler is once again unfortunately the inferior Dynamax choice. Zeraora stops me, as do things like Ice-Cube and Appleton, even Dynamax Wailord, so getting off a couple of dances may still not even be worth it. Celebi is another mon that can get stopped by things like Appleton and Centiskorch and can't quite run enough coverage for everything. A Scarf set could be intriguing, but I like the 6 I've brought a lot more. For the first time, Aegislash is going to be riding the bench, not common as it struggles with the Dark types immensely, in addition to things like Centiskorch. Again, I consider maybe a Scarf set here too, but it's about time to give the sword a little break. Finally, I really wanted to bring a Alolan Dugtrio, and it was on the first iteration of the team, but I don't think it's going to cut it. It doesn't quite have the power to break through things like Appleton, Wailord, Corsola, even Necrozma, not to mention Ice-Cube stops it hard on the physical side. Also, if you hadn't already noticed, I'm bringing Excelgor this week, so having 2 super feral, super fast mons is a little bit redundant, as even though they serve different roles, neither can switch in safely at all. That said, let's go over to the team that I've prepared. Okay, we have to start off with the Excelgor. You may have noticed that there exist zero forms of hazard removal on the other team. Excelgor thus makes the ideal lead, setting up spikes with absolute ease, as well as taking advantage of anything trying to set up on me with Encore. It's also useful for outspeeding Zero Aura, and can even serve as a one-time nuke with Final Gambit should I so choose. Bug Buzz is just solid coverage overall, hitting Obstagoon, Necrozma, and Appleton super effectively in particular. Simple set, potentially difficult execution and picking out which moves to use when. I'll need good anticipation on this one to get up the spikes when needed, while keeping Excelgor useful for other capacities. Moving on to the other hazard, we've got Seismitoad here for rocks, as well as to check most of the team that doesn't have grass coverage. Defensive investment with enough special investment to live 2 Necrozma Photon Geysers, as well as 3 Wailord Max Hailstorms, factoring in the hail damage. Otherwise, the rocks won't be removed, so Toxic the Big Fat Mons, set up rocks. Earth Power is nearly unresisted. Knockoff spam is amazing too, removing things like Heavy Duty Boots, the Obstagoon's Flame Orb, Corsolas Eviolite. All those things are just amazing. I just need to be wary of the grass coverage coming from things like Zero Aura, Centiskorch, Necrozma, and other things. Once I bait out those moves, I go to the appropriate checks. Zero Aura, for example, might be better checked by Weezing if it's got Grass Knot. Weezing is also much more physically defensive to act as best a check as it can to the plethora of physical attackers that he's got. A special Necrozma is not really a matchup I'd want anyways. Strange Steam hits everything but Centiskorch at least neutrally, but even that gets buffed by 100% accurate Toxic without being able to do too much back to me, or its Coil Boost could be taken away by the Clear Smog, move that should also work on something like Phalanx or Zero Aura that's trying to no retreat or bulk up on me, neither of which also like taking a burn from Will-O-Wisp. Like Seismitoad, I just have to be wary of Zen Headbutts being tacked onto things like Phalanx or Ice Cube, but otherwise should act as an effective wall. The offensive pair up to this is the Rotom, who is a very standard set with Nasty Plot, Volt Switch, Overheat, Toxic. After Nasty Plot, most of his team actually does get KO'd by the appropriate move, and those that aren't, that is Appleton, Centiskorch, and Corsola, will despise taking the Toxic coming its way before eating a Volt Switch afterwards. The EVs may seem a little bit weird, but with them I outspeed Max Speed Wailord, get max HP, up to a good leftovers recovery number of 304. They also give me a very good chance of surviving 3 Zero Aura close combats, while also increasing the odds of KOing Zero Aura after the special defense drop of a close combat. The momentum is huge as well, considering I want to force good scenarios for myself to threaten what is out on the field, maybe get him to switch more often onto the hazards that are stacking up, with Zero Aura being the only resistance or rather immunity to the Volt Switch. Having all these stats also helps out a lot. This Rotom fits perfectly with my objective and can get me into the other threatening members of the team very easily, starting with my special attacking Scarf Kyurem. Earth Power, hitting things like Drapion and Zero Aura, Freeze Dry, the Appleton and Wailord, Flash Cannon, the Ice Cube, and Draco Meteor hits, well, actually everything. He doesn't have any Dragon Resist or immunity, so dropping some Dracos seems to be the way to go. Outspeed Max Speed Zero Aura with a Scarf and a non-select Noise Ice Cube form is also outpaced. It's a pretty easy revenge option. Kyurem actually doesn't do a great job of OHKOing things though, even with a modest nature, but it gets a lot easier when you start stacking up the passive damage. Centiskorch gets Toxic by the Rotom before eating a Volt Switch out to Kyurem. Drapion switches in on rocks and 2 layers of spikes. Things like that are all it really takes to get the opponent's team within range of Kyurem's attacks. And following the trend of each of these first 5 mons, special attacks are much more valuable simply because of Ice Cube, so Outrage will not be taking advantage of it. The final team member does not follow this trend, as we've got a somewhat standard, also bulky, bulk up Scrafty. It has obviously some answers in the forms of Play Rough from Zero Aura, Belly Drum Ice Cube if I'm not set up, defense drops from Centiskorch and Appleton, but Scrafty is still very valuable for its dark typing as well as knockoff. I already mentioned how much I love knockoff spam in this match, and having a dark type to send in against Necrozma makes me feel so much better against his team overall. That, and setting up a couple of bulk ups, let me take those hits that you wouldn't expect. I already have EVs for Obstagoon's close combat, against whom I can Drain Punch most of it back, but at +2, even Zero Aura's Play Rough struggles to 2-hit KO. If I can nab a boost or two against something like, say, the Drapion or the Wailord that's letting me set up, it could just be GG from there. So, again, overall the game plan involves getting up a bunch of hazards, removing them with items with knockoff, statusing stuff with Toxic to bring them down a bit, while forcing switches, and then cleaning up things with something like a Scarf Kyurem or Bulk Up Scrafty. So, let's see how that strategy played out in the actual battle. So, getting into the battle, let's take a look at the team preview. No Drapion, no Ice Cube, no Galarian Corsola, but seeing no Phalanx is pretty nice, with Dynamax Wailord here instead. I actually debated a little bit about the lead, especially considering how obvious Excelgor is here, but with nothing I'm really afraid of being scarfed or taunted, I might as well just go ahead and start with it, and if something sets up with, I don't know, rocks or coil, I can just go ahead and click the Encore. And strangely enough, he's going to start off with the Appleton, which I'm most definitely okay with. While Bug Buzz can do a lot of damage, Appleton can recover health pretty easily, and the spikes are way more important. So this layer is up permanently as he goes for a Leech Seed, and that will be met with an Encore, forcing a second Leech Seed, and that'll let me get another layer of spikes up. Sandiscourge is a very good switch, and it does not take spikes damage on entry either, but the second layer does go up, so that's going to be crucial for chipping down a sixth of the health of anything else coming in. Final Gambit really doesn't do that much, especially considering Sandiscourge has a high HP stat and could very well be invested in it, considering the boot set. A third layer of spikes could also be pretty nice, but I wonder if I could use Excelgor a little bit later as a sack or potentially as a revenge killer, seeing as how I outspeed everything, especially since I have a very good switch in Rotom-Heat. Unfortunately, I will eat a knockoff, losing me my leftovers in the process. He isn't going to do much to me, though, otherwise, so I'm just going to go for a Toxic, land it, and Fire Lash only does 15% as we get to finally start chipping away at the threat that is Sandiscourge. But this does sound like a pretty revolt switch to me. It's only going to take, though, 17%, which tells me it's very bulky. Toad is switching for Fire Lash and Power Whip, isn't threatening the Rotom here, but I eat yet another knockoff, so I lose yet another set of leftovers, as well as 19%. And this, my defensive walls are starting to be worn down pretty quickly. I'm going to make the double out into Rotom, which is still pretty safe, gets me another Volt Switch, but he also was going to switch out into Appleton, the Grass type, and makes an easy switch in. But he'll take spikes damage first, then recover up a little bit with leftovers. Wearing things down is the name of the game, so I get my another Toxic off, and he's going to take out half of my remaining health with the Dragon Pulse. I don't really have anything else better to do here, so I'm going to Volt Switch out into the Weezing, and he's going to take nothing from Appleton as he eats up the Dragon Pulse, which you kind of needed to use in order to try to take down the Rotom. So we're in a pretty decent spot here. I'm going to force another switch onto the spikes, and it's going to be Wailord taking a sixth of his health. I'm going to Strange Steam, do 21%, and get the Confusion. Those are both very important things. It shows the Wailord is fully specially defensive, and it also gives a possible advantage on Dynamaxing for me, though, because I did get the Confusion chance. This seems like a relatively free Toxic, minus a Sandiscourge switch, so I'm going to set down the Toxic on the Wailord as he actually crits me back with a Max Steel Spike, taking out more than half my health, half after the recovery. Not sure if that was the best option when I had a Seismitoad available, especially because my walls are starting to get broken down a decent bit. So I'm going to go into the Seismitoad now, as I get pretty lucky here, and he hurts himself in Confusion, only a little bit of health because of the up defense, but still. And this will let me get my rocks up too, which will stay forever, and he gets another self-inflicted hit from the Confusion, which is just super unfortunate. Being able to save the Toad, get up rocks for absolutely free, it's definitely bad luck, and I do apologize for that. So Appleton is going to come in for round 2 onto spikes, as well as the Stealth Rock, as I get rid of its leftovers as well. This thing is not looking particularly healthy, which is, I go Weezing on the Apple Acid. It's not going to do much of anything, 18%, even when I'm fully physically defensive, and should allow me to pick up the KO on the next turn. Turn 16, finally get the first KO, but I feel pretty good by having all these hazards up. The Wailord is going to be his switch in, again, on the hazards. I'm going to go into Seismitoad to get a relatively safe switch now that it's already Toxic, and I get to eat up the Surf too, which is just amazing. Seismitoad getting back up and healthy is very important overall, but he does survive my incoming Earth Power and Toxics me, which is pretty big. Without leftovers, it's starting to add up a little bit. Weezing gets its second KO. Now in comes the Obstacoon, again, onto all these hazards. Look at that, he's already taken 29% just from switching in. That's why the hazards were so important in this game. This is a very interesting switch. I have designated the Neutralizing Gas Weezing as my switch, but I think there's an opportunity here. I stay in on the knockoff, my item's already knocked off, and I get to knock off his Flame Orb in returns, and now he will not be getting the Guts boost at all, and I don't need to use that Weezing to help check this, which is pretty nice. I can still go into the Weezing, of course, as he goes into his Zero Aura. Once again, he's taking 28% from the hazards. Zero Aura and Weezing is kind of a matchup I wanted. He's going to Grass Knot, anticipating me to go back into the Seismitoad as I miss a Will-O-Wisp on it. So we'll call that kind of a draw there. I'll eat up the Will-O-Wisp and just hit back with a player off. Not sure, the way around there. I'm going to eat up the player off, finally land my Will-O-Wisp. Not really sure why he's going for the player off there, if he was anticipating Scrafty to come in or something like that, but the Zero Aura coming in on the side spoon in the first place did telegraph the Grass Knot, so I felt pretty good about switching into this anyways, and staying in. I don't think I really needed to switch from this at all, especially because of that. And you may be concerned about me giving, say, the Flash Fire boost to the Centiskorch or burning the Obstagoon, but I felt like the Obstagoon in particular, I have Guts still, so I don't really mind that much if he's going to switch in, take more hazards damage. The Guts isn't going to activate anyways because of neutralizing gas, so yeah, I think it was a relatively safe play, especially considering that once Zero does Plasma Fist when burnt, I'm only taking 17%, which is kind of crazy. Going to do a nice 37% back while getting yet another Confusion. I feel fine just Strange Team again, which I will do after taking yet another Plasma Fist, netting Weezing its third KO of the match. Crazy. So anyway, Necrozma is going to be the switch in, no damage, second Wear of Boots, Scrafty's switching every time, and unfortunately I see a Calm Mind, which is a big yikes. I really didn't want to see that, and suddenly I'm starting to feel pretty underprepared for this thing. I have a lot of my members low, outsped, and or special attackers, and that's now kind of working against me hardcore. I had all these special attackers for the Ice Cube, and I kind of didn't remember that Slings could boost their special defense. Let's say a Calm Mind. Not looking that great. Heat Wave does 32%. I'm going to bulk up because I want to make sure that the knockoff that gets rid of boots hurts hard. This is now a very dangerous game we're playing, so you both start to boost up a couple more times. With 3 boosts, according to my calc, I should one-hit KO with knockoff, even through Prism Armor. Maybe it would have been better to do it earlier and then just continue to knock off through the Moonlight. With this, though, a crit or a burn could just end the whole game. At +3/+3, Necrozma could theoretically destroy the rest of my team. I need to be incredibly careful, but I have not been. The moment of truth is here. He does not crit or burn, and the knockoff will KO the Necrozma in response, and the game has just been saved. I should have played a little better to try to prevent this. Probably the best solution would have been to just put a physical move on a Kyurem somewhere, just in case it got out of hand like it did. This was seriously a worrisome moment. It makes me think about what could have been. Maybe it would have been better to knock off a little earlier and then just have Excelgor come in and Final Gambit onto it. Probably would have been the safest option of those. But as it is, Scrafty is +3/+3 against 2 physical attackers, which makes me very confident. I don't know if the Sunscorch has something like Leech Life, so I'm just going to rest off whatever it does, get back up to full health, and get the first turn Shed Skin Wake Up. That means GG, of course, as knockoff will KO the Centiskorch. Even with it removing my item and getting my defense down a stage. The last mon is Obstagoon. Even if it tries to stall out a little bit with this Obstruct, bringing my HP or my defenses back down to normal. I specifically EV'd this thing for the close combat. It's only going to do 50%, and a Drain Punch back will take care of it there. Another crit just to add on a little bit more hacks there. So giving Scrafty half of the KOs and Weezing the other half. GG to Haberfish, a 6-0 victory that could have very easily been a 6-month sweep from the Necrozma, or something similar could have happened had one of my broken walls gone all the way down. Necrozma was a lot scarier than I had prepped for, and the knockoffs were definitely rough to deal with as well. But I will take it. I'm very glad the hacks didn't go off in that moment in particular. So let's move on to the post-game interview. Alright, so we're here with the post-game interview with Haberfish. How are you doing, sir?
Hi, I'm doing pretty well. How are you, Nate?
I'm doing pretty good. We're just going to go over the team that Haberfish brought here real quick. As you two have got Centiskorch, Appleton, Zero Aura, Necrozma, Big Wailord, and the Obstagoon. So, first off, this Obstagoon set, there's some wacky numbers on here. Knockoff close combat, definitely a couple moves I was expecting on there. Flame Over getting knocked off early was kind of unfortunate, but anything in particular went into this funky Obstagoon set?
Yes, okay, so here's the story of the Obstagoon set. I brought Obstagoon on for the first time, I think, last week, and it was Memorial Day, and I was rushing, or something happened with my battle with Stevens. So what happened was, I found an Obstagoon set online. I'm pretty sure I just searched Obstagoon Smogon. I copied and pasted what I found, and I went back. And so we've tried to figure out, where did these EVs come from? So I had to search the EVs in Google and with comma Obstagoon, found it, and it is actually a 1v1 set. So someone made this 1v1 set. Don't know who, but it's what I use. So.
I mean, with the exception of no facade on there, it's relatively standard overall. Just the numbers are kind of odd. I'm really curious to see if someone can put something up as to what exactly the EVs do. But until then, like,
yeah. So if you're listening to this and you made this, please comment.
Yeah, please
share.
let us know.
A video response essay would be very appropriate.
Would be ideal, yes. So next we're going to go into the big Dynamax one, Wailord, with Ice Beam, Surf, Heavy Slam, and Toxic. The Heavy Slam caught me off guard a little bit there too. I didn't expect the physical attack on here, but as I look, actually attack and special attack are even, but this is very specially defensive. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, the Heavy Slam specifically was that I looked into that a lot because I was deciding between Heavy Slam and another metal move. And that again, this was something from like the previous match. I think I needed
Iron Head or something.
Iron Head, yeah, something Steel type. No, did I say metal? Steel type, but not PCG.
That's right.
Yeah. So and I was just like, well, Wailord's really big, and I think the damage calcs will work. I think I was trying to fight something that was very lightweight, and I needed a metal move, and it was a scary Pokemon. I don't know who it was, but I don't know.
Could have been the Weezing. I can't imagine Weezing being too heavy.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't Weezing for this match. It was, again, this is a Pokemon I pulled from the previous match.
Right. Okay, Wailord obviously stuck around quite a bit. I was very surprised to see how little Strange Team was doing. Like, oh my gosh, this thing is especially bulky beyond belief.
Yeah. The special defense. I think I was also afraid of like trick type moves. I don't know. I think again, this Wailord was made for a very specific team, and I did not have enough time this week to change it. So
yeah, probably could have helped against like Rotom and Celebi special moves. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
hit back like Ice Beam or Surf.
Yeah.
Next we have of course Kyle, the Necrozma there. Heavy duty boots. I see a setup set here with Calm Mind and Moonlight. That's kind of rude, sir.
Yeah, I really like I practiced with in OU, and I really like the setup Necrozma just because I don't know, it's fun and it's like kind of scary. So
absolutely,
yeah.
It seems like a lot of common users of things like Toxic. You could even just hit with a Photon Geyser straight out, so it can threaten them very easily. So,
okay.
Yeah,
I'll have to keep that in mind.
I like that a lot. Yeah. Psychic Fire is very good coverage just for between two moves too, and having recovery on top of it with Moonlight, like, don't sleep on Necrozma. That's good.
Yeah, and if you watch the replay of this battle, you can't tell how long I took to decide to use that Heat Wave because I thought Moonlight for a long time. I thought Moonlight was a damaging move, so I was trying to think like, oh, is Fairy a good choice to use? And then I'm like, no, this is Moonlight. It's not good.
Moonlight, not Moonblast.
Yeah, there it is. That's why. Okay, maybe I was thinking Moonblast. That makes me feel a little better.
I was wondering why. Like, click. Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. See, 4 attacking, 0 aura with that magnet to power up the Plasma Fist as well. Very speedy. This thing definitely warped my into building just how much faster this was than everything else on your team and the coverage it gets. Yeah.
I had to bring 0 aura like every time. Yeah.
It's like, well, if it's bulk up, it's really scary, but then you can have all these coverage moves to go with it, and oh my goodness, what an absolute pain. What a pain to prep for.
Yeah, it's definitely like a wild card, and I've been keeping the same set, but maybe I'll mix it up in the finals just to keep everybody out. So
yeah, so I've seen Calm Mind special attacking 0 aura start to pop up a little bit more on the ladder.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a Thunderbolt on there. You just automatically look at the attack, but special attack's only 10 points lower. It's not bad. The move pool is so big, you get almost as much coverage on the special side. Obviously, you see Grass not there for the Seismitoad.
Right, yeah. I was trying to predict that Seismitoad a few times. You saw me use those Grass Knots, and I'm sure you were thinking, he was afraid of Seismitoad.
I definitely had to keep that in mind with Seismitoad. Like, this thing walls it pretty well, but if he has Grass Knot, it's
right, yeah.
I think that's the power of 0 aura there, too, with Play Rough as well. Scrafty actually goes against it pretty well. But if it has Play Rough, I have to be careful just because this thing can have just about anything on it. Something that's generally the same every time, though, is Appleton. This is overall a pretty standard set, but I think we all kind of, at least in my playthrough of Sword and Shield, found this set kind of naturally as well, and it does its job. It does it very, very effectively. Obviously, it took a long time to break through this.
A long time. Sorry, what was that?
It took a long time to break through the Appleton there. And Apple Acid in particular, I was very worried about. As I was going with the Scrafty set, whenever I decided on, I thought, okay, what can beat this? Actually, repeated drops from Apple Acid, because it drops every single time. That's a threat.
Yeah. Appleton was definitely something that I copied from the internet and then decided, like, okay, I definitely want to make it bulkier, so I used leftovers. But
I still like leftovers on there. That seems to synergize it pretty well with what it's trying to do with Recover and Leech Seed. And just kind of stick around for forever. Having the defense as well as compared to the special defensive Wailord, as well as the final member special defensive Centiskorch made a lot of sense. Centiskorch with a Rest Talk set. Fire Lash is just, it's so good. I had 0 immunities, lower defense every time. Centiskorch, just, I think a very underrated one, personally.
Yeah, I really love Fire Lash. I didn't quite understand what it did until I did my one practice like battle, and I was like, oh my gosh, Fire Lash is super useful. Like
super spammable.
Yeah, super spammable. Like I started using it at the end there because I'm like, well, probably gonna lose, but like Fire Lash is doing some interesting things, so I'll try it.
By the end, negated all 3 of my defense boosts on bulk up.
So
everyone was a whole lot more possible.
Right. Yeah, everyone was like, oh wait. Yeah, but it was fun.
And then the 4 Pokemon that didn't come, Drapion, I kind of expected it not to come. But I was a little worried about Toxic Spikes. That was the main reason why I had Neutralizing Gas on the Weezing, was to pick those up. But I was afraid of knockoff spam, and apparently not afraid enough, because you still did some work with knockoff on Centiskorch. But any reason particularly for no Drapion?
No Drapion. Drapion was hard to remove. Because Drapion, Drapion is my setup.
Right.
I think really what it was is I wanted to choose Pokemon that I knew well. So what I did was I just took the last team that I used and I removed 2 Pokemon. I think it was Ice Cube because I was afraid. Steven told me, like, you're really good at planning for like wind conditions. So I'm like, Ice Cube's totally wind conditions. So I got rid of Ice Cube and I got rid of someone else. And I think just Drapion just wasn't in that team.
Sure,
so.
Yeah. We want to talk about Ice Cube then too. 5 of my 6 team members had special attacks to help deal with the Ice Cube. Only one being Scrafty, and even then, if I had enough bulk ups before it came in, I was going to beat that. So, I think proper. Yeah.
Ice Cube creates fear. Ice Cube is a major threat. Like,
really
and
I've seen it help you win both your first 2 battles in the league.
Right. Yeah. I just learned. I think what I did is I saw a thumbnail about how Ice Cube is unbeatable, and I'm like, okay, this is totally clickbait, but I need to pay attention. Because Ice Cube's good, and no one picked it in the draft by the time I thought of picking it. So I picked it, and it's been fun. And Ice Cube's new, so people don't really like. Some of us who haven't been playing Pokemon like the main games, like we're still catching up, and so Ice Cube.
I even at first wrote it off as kind of a gimmick thing, and then like, I can have something like even Weezing tank it. Okay, let's look at the standard set. It has Zen Headbutt. Well, maybe Weezing doesn't tank it. Maybe it has a little bit more to it that I'm not looking at. So I prepare the heck out of that.
Sure. Yeah. I'll take it at face value. I'll use it, and maybe someone else did the calculations for me.
Right. That thing's strong. Belly drum so easily. It's so interesting. The whole Pokemon kind of revolves around belly drumming up. But I've got Corsola, your first pick from the draft, that also did not make an appearance as a ghost type. That was one of the big reasons why I started loading up on things like Knockoff and Toxic, was in preparation for that Corsola.
Yeah, again, Corsola was just, I saw Corsola and I thought, oh, maybe it's going to be useful and interesting here because it's different, but I just, again, very little time.
I understand. And Phalanx, the last one that didn't come, definitely worried about that. My dedicated switch into that, you didn't get to see it in the battle, but Clear Smog Weezing was there to remove the no retreat boosts, but I was definitely worried about Phalanx.
I again, the reason why I chose Phalanx was because I love seeing it in the game, and also I love no retreat, and I used to play Cloyster all the time when I played So I was like, no retreat's like super cool. So
yeah, I have a buddy who I've been showing all the different Pokemon to, like on a server, Discord server from one, as like a Pokemon battle kind of thing. Which one is your favorite? Which one's the coolest? And as soon as he saw Phalanx for the first time, he said, "Well, that's it. I have a new favorite Pokemon." Just spent the rest of the day just showing him Phalanx pics. Like, this thing is so cool. I love it.
Yeah, like it's and what the way they show it on the route in Galar. This is super off topic. It shows up, you're like, what is that? And and then you battle it, and it's so cute. And
as soon as it like pops out, all the little ones behind and like makes the formation. Oh, this is
right.
That's so good.
Yeah,
I love this thing. Beautiful. Well, that wraps up the team. Any other comments you want? Anything about the battle in particular? Anything you wish had gone better, or the things that you liked about it?
I think it went well. It was a lot of fun. I was really scared of Kyurem just because Chad's Kyurem was so scary, by association. And I knew your what was it? Aegislash. It has a 6-0 kill death ratio or whatever. And I was just like, I don't like. It's such a mind game with Aegislash, and I'm not good at.
Aegislash runs multiple sets so effectively, but I just thought it was just okay in the match. Didn't bring it, and like I had done with someone earlier, I didn't bring the Kyurem in that match because I thought maybe they might over prep for it. We've seen Aegislash do a lot the last couple weeks. Maybe the same thing might happen here. So
I think the last thing is like with this battle, I was really trying to prioritize like just trying not to break the rules and like remembering, okay, I gotta use Appleton and I gotta use Centiskorch because I haven't used it yet, and I know you were at the top of the tier, so I thought, well, now's the time to do that, and then we'll just see if we can get a win out of it. Maybe we can.
I definitely understand the need to do everything there. I've been trying to like use Alolan Dugtrio, but I haven't been able to show off or do anything with it, but still got to use it at some point, so I definitely get it.
You'll get it in. Yeah, no, I did my best, and I think I made you sweat a little bit. I think that was good. It was an entertaining battle. So.
I definitely did. The 6-0 looks bad, but I think it was closer than that. There were plenty of times where I was like, my walls are getting worn down. Well, it takes one or two of them to break, and then suddenly everything flows through.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So that'll wrap it up for this one. Next week, we have got another Matt and his Cincinnati Incineroar, so hope to see you there.